the diversity in horror panel. I'm going to start us off real quick by having all our esteemed panelists introduce themselves and also tell you all where you guys can follow them. So give your social media handles, guys. We'll start with.
Oh, me. Okay. I can't see her in my blind spot. Hello, my name is Jade Theriault. I'm a comedian, and my social media is Jade Comic.
My name is Lilith Fury. I am an actress, a producer, writer, and my Instagram is lilith.fury.
Hi, I'm Cavazos. I am an actress and an alt model, and you can find me on pretty much all of my social media at the Cavazos.
Hey guys, I'm Stephanie Martinez. I'm a spooky creator / makeup creator. You can find me across all my social media at Simply Spooky Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Sam Block. I'm a horror actor and I produce live shows, and you can find me on Instagram at butcher.block.
I'm Alice Wright. I'm a creature effects artist, and you can find me on Instagram at AliceWright_official.
All right. So you guys, everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I've never been known to have a quiet voice, so you guys in the back row, I'm sure you guys can all hear me. Those, you'll have to share that one over there because you can't have mine. All right. So, sorry guys. And today I forgot the cue card, so we're going to be doing this old-fashioned way. The questions I email to you, just rewrite off the emails. All right, here we go. So, yep. Why does everyone feel mainstream media still shies away from using more or any at all diverse characters in their movies / shows?
Personally, for me, I think there's the whole belief of sex sells, and there's the belief that anyone who is outside the beauty standard is somehow not marketable, that you have to be tall, you have to be thin, you have to have Botox and plastic surgery, and you have to be young, you can't be old, you can't have braces, you can't be disabled, and if you are, it has to be, an invisible illness. And I think there's just that whole belief that anyone who is outside the beauty standard isn't profitable, isn't valuable enough, and they think that investing and having us in movies, it would only be good if they could toss you in a corner for diversity.
Well, and I think kind of building on what Lilith just said, there comes a point where I think that there's talking about the marketability there's this idea that if the formula isn't broken, why would I try to fix it? I know this is gonna sell, if I have blonde actress Barbie doll A in this lead role, I know this is gonna sell regardless. So the idea of moving out of that scope into something kind of different territory is, I think, scary for some people that are trying to market a project that they're not sure that it's going to sell because, oh well, if I do this, then I'm just not gonna be in that genre that I want to be.
I'll say from a disabled perspective, it's kind of like a lot of, especially film sets, shy away from getting disabled actors because disabled actors are high maintenance. So we have a lot of, we need more breaks, we need, just more accommodations, and that costs money. And, it's like, even here, like there's no ramp, so it's like, it's just inconvenient, we're inconvenient. And it's kind of this vicious cycle where disabled actors in particular don't try out for opportunities because they're disenfranchised. And then it's just kind of like, that's why they're not auditioning, and a lot of film companies say like, oh, we didn't get a lot of auditions from disabled actors. It's like, well, there's a reason. So it's kind of,
I agree with what everybody's saying. These writers and producers and casting agents are stuck in their way where they think the certain mold is what everybody wants to see and what's gonna sell, and that's not the case. Everybody wants to be seen, everyone wants to be included, and this is what everybody's demanding, but these people are just stuck in their ways.
Yeah, piggybacking on that, I think especially big studios, they're happy to cast marginalized people in side roles, right, to check a box. But when it comes to heroes and final girls, I think they're afraid that who they see as their main audience, maybe like white, able-bodied, straight cis people, they think it's gonna alienate them to cast people who don't look like them. And I think that's not giving them enough credit, possibly.
So, I think it's kind of strange, because I think that a lot of times production companies will have a movie and they will have a target demographic. So say it's like a male to 18 to 35 demographic, and they just have a very narrow-minded view of that without realizing that even within that small demographic, you have a very diverse group of people. You know, you have people who are disabled, people who are plus size, people who are gay, straight, trans, you know, every ethnicity. So it's, even if you are limiting to a certain target audience, you can still incorporate diversity into it and appeal to, you know, appeal to that group. So I just think they're missing out on opportunity in sort of sense, you know.
Now with that, how do you guys feel that there is a separate standard between genders within the gender diversity? Okay.
separate standard between genders. I mean, yeah, the obvious trope is like, you know, the final girl is always very attractive and the men can be anything. So that's kind of, you know, the main thing we're operating off of, and with this movie that we're trying to fund and work on and produce and film that we're planning on doing, the other girls is kind of talking about that, saying, you know, there are no ugly final girls, excuse the euphemism, you know, like, but there are no final girls who are unconventional, fat, or disabled, or maybe a little homely looking, you know, there's some of that, but like, you know, it's not as obvious, so, but yeah, whereas with men, it's kind of, you can have different types of men, and it's normal in horror movies.
And piggybacking off of that, one thing I've noticed in horror movies is that both Freddy and Jason have all taken on men in wheelchairs, but there was no disabled women until way later on, and it was in Chucky. And what happened as soon as she got possessed? Oh, she could walk again. Disability magically gone, conventionally attractive. And well, they had a girl with autism at one point in one of the Jasons, but oh wait, it gave her telekinesis. So they tend to kind of work with that. And if you have a plus size character, usually it's the traditionally acceptable plus size, like Kathy Bates in Misery, where she's a size 14. You can't have anyone that's truly plus size without making their fat into a monster, like Amy Adams' character in Smallville, where, oh no, her fat is evil. Or even in Todd in the Book of Evil, fat was literally eating people. And it's just this whole, when it comes to women being disabled or being plus size, it's a huge no-no. And yet Jacob Batalon from Spider-Man, he's literally the star, the main character of Reginald the Vampire. He's allowed to be fat. There is no female actresses in his size category anywhere except for Chrissy Metz. And her whole thing is, let's focus on her weight. And it's the same thing for disabled characters, where it's like, let's make them a villain, let's have them, you know, be some scary monster. And it's like the movie that we're all working on, The Other Girls, it's basically taking all the characters from horror that we didn't get our movies. We're not, you know, the Laurie Strodes and, you know, the Nancy Thompsons. It's the people, the disabled women, the trans women, the trans men. It's all the characters that are often excluded, true plus size, and it's kind of a mockery of the way that the world tries to make us invisible. Well, what if we were? And if we're gonna be invisible, let's use our invisibility to kick monster ass.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I think, you know, I can't really articulate it pretty much any more than Lilith just did, but, you know, it's always been acceptable kind of in any genre, but I think particularly in horror, for whatever reason, that, again, the diversity with men is completely different, and whenever the masculine character is like going through something or suffering through something, that's fine, that's perfectly acceptable. However, it's always a female that is the problem if they are, especially if they're suffering with like mental illness, that sort of thing. That's somehow the reason that we tend to awaken hell portals and that sort of thing is through a mental illness. So, I mean, yeah, I know, it must be Tuesday, right? So finding ways that, you know, those things are an asset like it is in the other girls versus, you know, a opening of a hell dimension, you know, is something that I think needs to be explored in a lot more projects.
Again, I think this goes back to the writers. It takes a good writer to be able to write a part that's inclusive for someone, especially because with the writers that we do have, when they do pick somebody that's disabled or not their standard body type, it's always a bad part where they get killed off easily or they're not a main character. And honestly, that change really starts with us writing maybe a movie, them hiring a better writers, somebody who has more insight on diversity.
I think we've been seeing diversity in male characters for a lot longer than for female characters. Like, he was treated absolutely horribly, but I think a lot about Franklin from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, it's 1974, you know, you have a larger guy in a wheelchair. His friends don't know how to help him, and he does die, but it existed, and I don't think they could have written that character back then as a woman. And speaking, you know, personally about the other girls, something that means a lot to me is like, my character's a bad guy. My character's a villain. But I'm trans, and my character being bad has nothing to do with them being trans. I don't even know that my character is trans. We haven't talked about that. You know, but for people
theater kid, been drowned in the lake.
So maybe, yeah. So seeing, you know, people who look like us, where it isn't seen as part of the problem, like was said previously, I think is going to be really important.
So my answer is not nearly as articulate as theirs, but I think a big problem is just lazy writing, and also the production companies. They allow for lazy writing where they just continue to repeat the same tired tropes rather than trying to, you know, be more progressive and to look at how society as a whole is changing. They're still using the same tropes from the 74, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I just think it's a bigger problem than just say production companies, but it goes all the way down to the writers, and you know, so hopefully that changes.
Now, something you guys touched on, when you do see characters that are more diverse, do you feel they are getting killed off quicker, or are they made to be made the butt of the joke? How do you guys feel about that?
I feel like every time there's a diverse character, it's not coincidental. So whether they get killed off early or not, I mean, they do sometimes, but it's like they're hardly ever there. And so, but the film revolves around that diversity. Like the film will point out and make sure that you know that they're different. So whether it's like, I'm like totally not answering the question at all. But you know, but I'm first, so I had to say something. There's one film actually, cause I was trying to find films like that fit the exception to the rule of a final girl, that is attractive, and I was typing it into AI ChatGPT, and it was giving me nothing, and just nothing existed, and I was like feverishly just watching films and feeling disappointed leading up to this. And a friend of mine recommended, he's actually in the audience, but he recommended a film called Piggy, which is a Spanish film, which almost kind of defies that trope of an attractive final girl. She's an overweight final girl, but it's not coincidental. And I don't want to give spoilers, but that would answer the question if I did spoil it. But
So you're saying no spoilers?
I mean, I don't know what the rules are. Just gonna kick me out. That's fine.
From what I've noticed, like in Jason, they finally showed there was a plus size character. So there was a plus size woman in Jason. However, she was a hitchhiker. She was sitting there. She had to be eating, and then immediately is killed within maybe 40 seconds of her being on screen. And her death is, oh no, she has to squeeze the banana as she's dying. Or in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, there was no lines. There was the fat woman in the wheelbarrow. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is they wanted to make sure that the audience truly saw how ugly and grotesque the fat woman was by getting a man in prosthesis in a fat suit to make him bigger, larger, and more gross. And then it's like, okay, now we can turn it into a zombie and have it chase people. So whenever they have a character, it's always, we want to make sure that you don't forget for a single second that this character is Fatty McFat. And this character over here, this disabled character, we have to be like, oh no, can Kathy make it if they're in a wheelchair? Well, Kathy's sad because she's in a wheelchair. And it's like, do you really have to add that line? Because anybody who actually has a friend that's disabled, they don't just stand there and go, hey, are you sad today because you're disabled? Because then they'd be an asshole. But it's like that. That's how it be. It's like no one talks like that. But in movies, they're like, hey, we just want to make sure that the audience watching is fully aware that this person is different, and now we're going to kill him for being different.
Well, and I think I'm going to take it a little bit outside of just that, but in terms of like creating characters that kind of end up being the brunt of the joke, or they're specifically to entice like a specific audience response, is sexuality of certain characters. The only time I've seen a bisexual female in horror movies is essentially either oh, well, we're suddenly in this, cave situation by ourselves, and now all of a sudden all of this tension has sort of built up that has no plot line for the movie whatsoever, but we know the male audience is gonna like watching this, as long as the two bisexual females fit that mold.
Gotta have kissy time.
Yeah, as long as us, never mind the fact that the killer's breaking down the door, we're gonna make out right now, but it's fine. They'll wait, it's good, it's all good. And so I think having that representation in there in terms of, somebody's sexuality, like the fact that, okay, I'm gay, I'm bisexual, shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be a trope in terms of, oh, well, this is gonna get, this specific sliver of a male demographic to watch whatever level of this movie is. So that's something that I've noticed is in particular, so.
I've seen time and time after, again, watching all these movies, that there's never anybody that's plus size or disabled surviving. And I think it has to do with how these writers see us. They think that we're weak and that we can't survive, but we're stronger. Just because we're plus size or disabled does not mean that we could not survive a horror movie. We could, and we need to start making a change and show these writers that just because we're different or we're not skinny, blonde, that we can't survive. We're way stronger than anybody thinks. And yeah, we need to be the change of that.
I do think we're becoming so aware of those tropes that even bigger studios are trying to tone it down a little bit when it comes to killing, you know, minority groups and marginalized people off, but you do still see it. Like, sometimes I don't even notice it. I saw the new Scream movie with my girlfriend, and she turned to me at the end and said, most people were stabbed very quickly. The lesbian had like a 3-minute death where she was shaken off a ladder and fell to the floor, you know? So we definitely do still see it. I think where we're seeing the most improvement is, I don't know, like Jordan Peele is a great example. When you see people telling stories that are personal to them, and it's not just somebody checking boxes, it feels more authentic. It feels like we're included.
So to touch on the trope thing, it's become so commonplace that they actually make reference to the tropes as like a trope almost now. It's kind of like they make reference to it like, oh, it's funny and stuff, but they don't stop. And I think that the way to get them to stop, unfortunately, is the only way to get them to stop, because these production companies, the larger ones, the larger scale ones, they don't, they're not doing any decisions based on like some moral compass, what they think is right. It's all about money, because it's a capitalist thing. So in order to get them to actually change, the best way to do it is if you see a movie or see a TV show or something like that, and you can buy a movie ticket or rent it or something like that, then if that movie encompasses your morals and what you want to see represented, for instance, and they will see the profit go up, and that's all they care about is dollar signs. So they'll be like, oh, well, the profit's gone up, we'll try it again, and then keep doing it over and over again. Eventually it becomes the zeitgeist of the entertainment business, where everything, becomes the norm, where now it's like, it's passe. So, yeah.
Now, you mentioned Jordan Peele's movies. Have you seen a change more so with the independent filmmakers, more so than the big budget movie studios over the last few years? Have you seen more of a change in that direction of using more diverse characters?
I'm always first, okay.
Oh,
Absolutely.
you can go to Ally. You want to switch to the other side?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
No. I'll comment on being first for every question. No, I do think so. I mean, I feel like the thing with indie filmmakers is they're trying to push the envelope more. They're trying to find new frontiers because they're not maybe as beholden to the big budget marketing. We have to make sure this movie works or else we lose millions and millions and millions of dollars situation. I mean, I have noticed that in Jordan Peele's movies, there's definitely more diversity. I mean, Stephen Ewan and Dope and things like that. But yeah, I think that to me, culture kind of has like this progression over time where it's like, okay, the able-bodied white man gets it, then the able-bodied white woman, then the able-bodied black man, then the able-bodied black woman. Now we have the disabled white man. Now we have, and so we're just kind of compounding on these identity markers. And, like there's a lot of disabled masculine actors out right now who are huge. I mean, huge relatively to as big as they can be, when you're a minority. But so far it's still dominated by white men. So, but as time goes on, then you start to see more. So I think it's a kind of a time thing, like a chronological thing over history, that we get more diverse, but also, yeah, in indie filmmaking circles, that's where those frontiers are starting to be explored, and will always be explored in indie circles.
One thing I've noticed when it comes to a lot of the independent films is I have seen more queer representation, but they are all really hot. And it's like, okay, we're gonna have a trans person, but they're gonna be like supermodel level, where you're gonna be like, damn, okay. And then you're gonna have, the super sexy lesbian, not just a gay guy, but he's gonna have to be a twink. And no bears allowed. And if you're gonna have a disabled person, it'll still be a disabled man. And if it's a disabled woman, it has to be an invisible illness. We've had a blind woman, we even have a blind TV series out. We had a whole movie where people were deaf, where the woman was deaf, I think it was Hush. And so it's like, okay, invisible illness, that way, even though she's disabled, she's sexy disabled. And it's like, oh, alrighty then. So like the independent films are getting more diversity, but it's for it seems like it's for show. It's like, yeah, see, we have a disabled person, we have this one plus size character over there, but they're still within what is socially acceptable level, but her face is chubby. So that'll make up for the fact that the rest of her body is still a size 12. As long as she has a chubby face, we can say maybe she's a 16. Who knows? The audience doesn't know. And they're kind of doing like, it's like a superficial level of diversity. It's still more than the big, studios are doing, but it's still sex appeal above all else. Gotta make everyone hot.
Well, and I think, again, kind of building off of that and kind of what I said before about, people living in this world of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because hey, these made money, so let's just keep doing the same thing over again. I think the bigger productions, that sort of thing, they're like, well, why would we change it now? It's fine. It's still working, so we can still do this. I think there's a fear almost in some of the indie world of pushing themselves outside of that boundary a little bit, because they're like, well, if I want my film to be successful, I've still got to lean into what these other productions are doing. Again, it doesn't matter, as long as they're hot, we're good.
Yeah.
But I need to lean into that, because, oh God, nobody's gonna watch my film if all of a sudden I have, maybe not the most conventionally attractive, butch lesbian in my lead. People aren't gonna wanna watch that. Maybe they're, so I don't know, and so I think that's where they kind of lie in that it turns into a vicious cycle of, well, people had pushback, so I don't know if I want to do that. So that's where I think more indie studios need to be like, you know what, I don't care.
I think these smaller companies have a little bit more inclusivity because of who's on their teams. Like Jordan Peele, he's been through so much, he's struggled, he's not in the category of a white man with blonde hair. He casts more people and tries to be more inclusive because of everything that he's been through. And he hires people who have that same mindset. He's not perfect. I know there needs to be way more representation, but it's a start. And I think it has to start with who they're hiring on their teams. Because if they're not even being inclusive on their teams, then they're not gonna do that on their film sets.
I think there's this interesting equation in indie filmmaking where the smaller the production, the less money you're working with, the fewer investors you have to check with that it's okay to tell your own story. A small, not small, but like a very indie scrappy production like the other girls where we're starting from. We're not asking anyone if it's okay to have plus size, to have disabled, to have trans people on our cast. We're saying, this is our production, take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, it can be seen as a risky move, but it's really nice to not have to ask if you can exist on a screen,
Yeah.
So I think that independent films can benefit a lot from the diversity part, because typically you'll have a director who is also the writer, and they're writing based on their own inspirations, their own experiences, their friends, people they know. And the fact is unlike in modern, major blockbusters, most people's friend group is very diversified, so it can give you an opportunity to, if you're going to write about what you know, to bring in, a lot of diversity in independent films. And I think it shows far more than in major productions. So.
And this is the last time I share questions ahead of time with Lilith, because she's answering everything I've already got on there.
I shared it with everyone.
I see. With the way movies and shorts are being made today, have you seen an uptake in diversity, not just in the genre, but in overall? I mean, anymore you can make a movie with basically your phone. You know what I mean? You've seen shorts being made that way. Do you feel that is becoming a little bit more commonplace now with the diversity? Not just with the, you know what I mean, they have to be hot, but a little bit more diversity overall.
Yes. No, I think, especially with social media, if you're talking about shorts, I mean, like, you know, there's short films, and there's content, and there's just like, you go on Instagram, I find the most outrageous performance art by people that I didn't even know could exist. You know, like a guy without legs, but also without an ass. Like, I'm sorry, like, it's unbelievable. And I'm just saying, like, that was a terrible example, but my point is, there is more diversity because there's more access to broadcasting a channel or your own thing to more people. And when you have more access, you're expanding the pool of people, and when you expand the pool of people, you get real people. Real people are diverse. And so, and I think that a lot of films and creators, again, like pushing those frontiers, like part of doing that is you're trying to mirror real life when you're making movies. You're trying to, or not, maybe you're a complete fantasy movie and you're not, but even fantasy movies try to reference real life and relate to real life. So the more we try to do that, the more you start to realize that, you know, disabled people, fat people, non-white people, you know, that should be not coincidental. That should be the norm, because it's most likely. Like one example I always give, which I love, is like Don't Mess with the Zohan. That movie. There's the secretary, Maysoon Zaid. She's a comedian. She's got visible cerebral palsy. But to me, I mean, I have a disabled perspective, so maybe I'm looking at it differently. But I didn't see it played for the joke. You know what I mean? She was just a secretary, because it's very likely that someone with visible cerebral palsy could be a secretary in a hair salon. So I don't know. That was a great example. Like I said, I'm always trying to find the exception to the thing we hate. So the norm. Yeah.
On social media, like especially on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, there's definitely, because more diversity, just because it's the users. So someone's gonna be like, I'm gonna record myself doing this. I'm gonna record, you know, my brother, my sister, my uncle's cousin's neighbor. So like everybody's getting everybody in there. So I think that is probably the closest there is to actual diversity, is if you're just watching random people's reels and stories. But a lot of people, they don't kind of leave their bubble. So a lot of people will only see stuff that they are already comfortable with. So one thing that I like to recommend to people is to find people outside of your normal circle. Find people that you aren't normally follow. If you realize that all of your friends are like white and straight and able-bodied, you know, try and find something else, like find more disabled people, like find more plus-size people, you know, find more trans people, find more people of color, you know, find people outside of your bubble. And that way you're able to actually get more perspectives, you're able to see a lot more creativity, because like some of the videos are just funny as all hell. And you're not gonna be able to see that if you're just watching the same thing over and over and over again.
Well, and I think talking about, you know, distribution, like the distribution market for film and TV is completely different now than it was probably 10, 15 years ago in terms of how it's done. And now we have I don't know how many subscription services I have anymore. I've lost track. But it's like every time, like, you know, there's a new one, all of a sudden there's 50 billion new, you know, projects out there. Some of them are crossovers from other, you know, obviously other things, but, you know, I don't know how many times, you know, I've flipped through, you know, Amazon Prime, and it's like, especially, you know, this time of year when they start like marketing, you know, like spooky movies or what, you know, any of that. Like, I'm like, I have never heard of this film, let's see. And, you know, like, I sit there and I go, holy crap, this got made and distributed, like, you know, for even, you know, when I don't like to necessarily say bad movies, they're usually always really entertaining, one way or another. But, you know, it's like, this is still getting made, and I think the accessibility to having these made and put in front of an audience, whether it's, you know, me sitting there with my second glass of wine going, sure, here we go, or, you know, another general audience, I think, you know, that market is there. Now it's just sort of a matter of, okay, can we make those films a little bit more diverse in terms of who we're casting, the crews that are working on those films in terms of who they're casting. And so it's the line is ticking, but maybe not quite as quickly as some of us would like to see it.
I think when it comes to social media and diversity, it could go 50-50 on one hand, depending on what I'm searching for. I can find somebody who's going through the same struggles that looks like me or that has the same mental illnesses. But then on the other hand, depending on what social media you're on, it goes by the algorithm and what social media is trying to push on you. And usually for certain platforms, they'll push a certain type of person that looks the same. So it could go either way.
Like was mentioned previously, technology changing has meant that filmmaking is more accessible than it's ever been. We can pull out the amazing camera in our pockets and make our own little movie if we want to. How much that's bled into the larger studios of, you know, anyone can be on camera, that's, as mentioned before, is taking a lot longer. But Alice had a great point of that when they see that these things are profitable, that people do want to see more diverse people on their screens. Hopefully they will listen. Probably not as soon as we will like, you know, but we'll make our own things until then.
So, social media is a complex creature. It's got a lot of good and it's got a lot of bad. But one of the good things is that it gives everyone the opportunity to be seen and be represented. And it's so popular that it's obviously, you know, it's obviously very popular with, you know, the masses. So the problem is why does the major production studios, why do they ignore the fact that social media and its diversity is encouraged? I mean, that's, I think that's a big question. It's like, why, if they see on social media that, you know, that people eat that stuff up, they love, you know, the diversity aspect of it, why do they not take advantage of it and include it in movies? Like, it doesn't make sense. It's kind of like, they're missing out on a cash cow.
I think they listen to the trolls, cause like I noticed that there's so many brands that I've modeled for where the brand doesn't see the fact that there's 80,000 likes on the post, that 80,000 people liked seeing me in the ad. They will instead focus on the 100 people that commented and said, what is this? Oh, pig emoji. Oh, vomit emoji. Oh, this is gross. And they'll be like, oh, are you okay? I'm like, I don't care what they think. Who the hell are they? So, like, anybody who gets that bothered over the appearance of another person, that's really pathetic. And why would I care about a pathetic person's opinion? But I think that the way that it works though is that the studios are kind of like the way that these brands are, where they don't see the 80,000 people that are like, hell yeah. They focus on the 100 people that are just like, nah, I don't like this. It's like, okay.
Well, and I think, you know, just, you know, building off of the social media, like, aspect of it, you know, on the positive side, now, you wanna talk about the idea of, yes, we can make our own projects, but the thing is now, with social media, the world is so much tinier in its own right, in the sense of, guess what? The people that want to see that diversity are finding each other. This entire panel of people found each other because I found this project because of social media. Another, random friend of mine had posted about auditions for this film and sent me a message and going, hey, you should probably submit to this. And I did, and here I am. And so the thing is those people that want to do those things are finding each other, and they're finding their own community in these groups through the social media. So maybe those 100 trolls might be, causing problems, but
Free
those
publicity.
exactly those 100 trolls that we say, okay, we don't care. Guess what? You also just brought another 500 people to that post that are going, holy crap, that's just like me.
Yep.
This is a project that I see myself in. I see myself as an actor, as I can identify with that actress, with that actor. I see myself in this project, and it just keeps growing from there.
Now, you guys mentioned the streaming services, with Netflix, Hulu, heck, we even have Shudder, which is all horror, right? Why do you think, with so much going on, those streaming services are still not implementing more diversity in it? What do you think is the bottom line for that?
I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. No, I kind of answered it a little bit. Just about, in terms of disabled people, there's access issues, and, they don't want to spend money or the time to try to accommodate. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer. Somebody else.
Like what I was saying earlier, I think that they are afraid of the trolls. That even though they can see that that's something that people want, they are focusing way too much, and they're way too scared about what some little basement dweller might have to say about what the movie looks like, or what happens if it upsets the incels. They're like, oh, another lesbian, oh no, it's someone that's not white, help, it's the end of the world. I think that a lot of them are just scared of angering them, and it's like, why? They're not always gonna be the target audience. It's like, I think a lot of movies, especially horror movies, cannot get their heads around the idea that horror is for everyone. Especially if you look around LA, and most goth scenes are Latinos. Like, we keep goth going. And I think that in their minds, it's just like, oh no, horror is for straight white men. And it's not. And I think that a lot of the streaming services are just scared of alienating what they think is the target demographic for horror.
I do want to say one thing off that is, I don't understand. Well, I'm starting to see. Like, I've been posting more on Instagram and kind of getting a taste of that viral done a little bit, and people get really angry when they see people who are very different, and it's confusing to me because, like, I'm not a political comic, and I tell dick jokes, a lot of comics too, but there's nothing controversial about what I'm saying, and I'm like, why am I getting death threats? Like, why do people want me to die? So there is a psychological disgust and opposition that people seem to feel, and I don't know where that comes from, but it's there, and I'm sure that seeps into maybe some of the reason why these streaming services are not moving as fast as we'd like them to be. I think the opposite side of that coin is pandering. Like, sometimes movies and things like that over-diversify or tokenize or fetishize, and then think they're doing God's work, but in reality they're just pandering. So there's always that fine line. Okay, that's my real answer.
Well, and again, I think, the needle is not moving nearly as fast as we would like it to, but I think kind of the genre itself makes people have to look at themselves a little differently, and sometimes, we always wanna see ourselves in the hero, but I think sometimes we start to see certain things of ourselves in the villains too. And, you know, I think for me, one of the big movies that psychologically impacted me was The Purge. Is because all of a sudden, the people that you think are your close friends, your close family, when push comes to shove, are they gonna shove you out the like bolted doors before they lock them down? And so sometimes I think it makes, going back to, you know, the trolls, and then again, we pander to them, but unfortunately some people in those studios see themselves in that too. They don't want to see themselves in that light, and it makes them uncomfortable, therefore we're not going to actually make the performances that way.
I think it also has to do with the fact that these companies, they don't want to get any complaints, they don't want to get any negative reviews. And most of the time, these complaints and reviews come from a little kid in their room, or somebody who thinks they're tough all of a sudden and hide behind their keyboard. And most of the time, it's hurt people. So it's people that just want to feel better, and they'll say something negative. But they're focusing on that instead of focusing on the people that want to see themselves, want to be represented. Because I know anytime I would look for any horror movie, I never saw anybody that looked like me. I would like to see that, because I know I would survive a horror movie.
Yeah, we've already established that big studios are concerned with profit, and I think the double-edged sword of social media is, while we can all find each other online, right, the voices of a few angry people are very, very loud in a way that they didn't used to be in, say, the 70s. And so now Tyler on his keyboard, right, can get the ear of an executive in a big studio if he tweets mean enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it comes down to they're afraid. It's fear. They're afraid of backlash. They're afraid of getting bad, you know, PR. And it's very sad. It's very sad that they're not willing to show people for who they really are, and they just want to limit it to just a very small stereotype. And it's sad and it's pathetic, and they should do that.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I did actually talk to an investor once. It was at some big party, and he had, I'm not saying who, he was a producer, he's a director, he had made a lot of incredibly popular horror series. And his whole thing was, he's like, I like the premise of your movie, but do you think it might be pushing too much that there's like someone that is queer and plus size and, you know, like indigenous and this and that? And I'm like, Bill, you know, that's not his real name. I'm like,
I know what's going through my head right now, by the way.
I just picked generic white man name. Like when they're younger, they're little Billy. But I was like, Bill, I'm Latina, I'm indigenous, I'm plus size, I'm disabled, and I'm queer, you know, I am all those boxes, and I'm literally in front of you right now.
I exist.
I am having a conversation with you about this. So, you know, you're saying like, I don't know, you know, like, would it be too much to have like all these characters, you know, in a movie? And it's like, you literally have me at your party. You know, it's like, how can you say that like we don't exist enough, we're not there because you don't see us on the screen when I'm in your living room? So it's kind of like the whole thing where they might see you in real life, but they don't want to process it. Because until they see somebody else put it on the screen, I think that it's still not real enough for them. Because movies are a reflection of the real world, but to an extreme. And whatever's going on in society, magnify that times 100, and that's what's going on in the real world. But it also works the other way around too. What we see as the audience, what we see in movies over and over and over again being perpetuated, we end up internalizing that as well. So I think that if more progress is done in film, then more people seeing that representation will feel more comfortable, and they'll become louder, more comfortable in their own bodies, stand up taller, and then that will start a cycle where we are able to start being included more. But somebody has to take the first step, and that's why I decided to write the movie, The Other Girls, because it's like, no, I wanna see her kick the living shit out of a bad guy. She's legit, she's doing some major damage, she's awesome. And, like, all the people in this panel, like, just kicking major monster butt, because, you know, you don't see people like us exist in horror movies, but you see us all in real life. I mean, hell, you're all looking at us right now. So
are not
obviously
holograms.
we're real.
So before the young lady left the room, she had given me the 5-minute mark. I had one more question, but if you guys don't mind, I will not ask that question, but open it up to the audience to ask you guys questions. How do you guys feel about that really quick?
Yeah.
Okay. Right there.
Regarding a lot of the films that you guys talked about were more of like the classic horror films, and as we kind of have rolled into like the 2020s, we've seen a lot of movies, especially by A24, like Bodies, 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 I Saw the TV Glow, Maxine, X, Pearl, and they're doing a good job, I'd say, with like racial and sexual diversity and like bringing feminism into the conversation and like breaking patriarchal rules. But not so good with disability representation, representing ethnic cultures. They don't branch into religion unless it's an incorrect representation of paganism or Satanism. Like, how do you guys view that? Because they're trying to like dip their toes in, but they're not going all the way.
I think a lot of it is just superficial. It's still the director trying to go with what he thinks is hot, because when you look at the A24